In the final years of Elvis Presley's life, there was a young woman who walked through the gates of Graceland not as a fan, not as a starstruck guest, but as family. Her name, Maggie Smith, born Magnolia Mae Smith. A college student, a daughter who had just lost her father, a young woman struggling to survive, and in 1974, in a quiet parking lot in Memphis, she met the king of rock and walked out with something no one expected: a job, a car, a college education, and something even more precious: a father. This is the true story of Maggie and Elvis, a bond so deep, so healing, so real, that it changed both their lives, and yet for decades it was buried, misunderstood, reduced to just a maid. But the truth? It's one of the most beautiful, moving relationships in Elvis's life, and today, we finally tell it the way it deserves to be told. It was 1974, Memphis, hot summer air. A young woman in her early 20s stood in a parking lot near a grocery store trying to hitch a ride. She had no car, no money, just a backpack, textbooks, and a dream to finish college. Her name was Magnolia Smith, Maggie. She had just lost her father. Her family was struggling, and she was barely making ends. Meet then. A white Cadillac pulled up. The window rolled down, and there he was, Elvis Presley. He didn't recognize her. She didn't scream. She just said, "I'm trying to get to school. I don't have a car." Elvis looked at her, not with fame, not with ego, but with recognition. He said, "You look like you've got a lot on your plate." She nodded, told him about college, about her dad, about how hard it was to keep going, and in that moment, Elvis made a decision. Come work for me. Not as a maid, not as a servant, but as an executive assistant. His words, not hers. From 1974 to 1977, the final 3 years of his life, Maggie became part of the inner circle at Graceland. But her most important job? College. Elvis didn't just hire her, he invested in her future. He told her, "Your #1 job is school. Everything else comes after." So he did what no one expected. He bought her a car so she could get to class. He paid her full college tuition. He gave her a private, quiet space at Graceland to study, away from the chaos. And he gave her a regular paycheck, signed by him, not because she needed to clean or cook, but so she could focus, so she could breathe, so she could become who she was meant to be. And when people later called her just a maid, she said, "They don't know the truth. I wasn't just anything. I was family." Maggie's official title, executive assistant. Her responsibilities, wide-ranging. She helped care for Lisa Marie, answered phones, ran errands, helped organize Elvis's chaotic days. It took a whole team to keep Elvis on schedule, and Maggie was part of that team. But more than that, she was present. In the quiet moments, in the tears, in the laughter, she traveled with Elvis to LA, to Las Vegas, stayed with him and the Memphis Mafia. And through it all, she saw a side of Elvis the world never knew. The human side. Because here's the truth. By 1974, Elvis was fading. The fame, the pills, the loneliness. He was a king with no peace. But with Maggie, he wasn't Elvis Presley, he was Dad. She had lost her father just a few years before. And Elvis, he stepped into that space, without being asked, without fanfare. She said, "He saw me hurting." And he said, "You don't have to go through this alone." And he didn't just say it. He lived it. Elvis would call her, not about work, but about grades. He'd say, "Maggie, give me your report. How did your test go? What are you studying? Are you keeping up?" She was majoring in biology, and Elvis was hella determined, his words, to see her get that degree. She said, "He cared more about my grades than I did. He'd celebrate when I got an A. He'd encourage me when I wanted to quit. And when she struggled, he didn't lecture. He didn't scold. He prayed with her. Yes, Elvis Presley, the king, would sit beside her, close his eyes, and pray, not for fame, not for healing, but for her. And then he would read to her, not from the Bible, not from a script, but from a book that meant the world to him, The Prophet, by Khalil Gibran, one of the greatest spiritual works of the 20th century, a book about love, loss, pain, and wisdom. And Elvis would read it aloud, slowly, gently, as if every word was a gift. Maggie said, when he read, his voice changed. It wasn't the concert voice, it was soft, real, like he was speaking just to my soul. And sometimes they'd just sit in silence, two broken hearts, healing each other. She also saw his humor, his playfulness. He loved to make her laugh, would do silly impressions, tell jokes, even dance in the hallway just to see her smile. And when Lisa Marie was around, he was dad, fully, playing with her, singing to her, trying to be present. Maggie said he wasn't perfect, but he was trying. And when he looked at his daughter, you saw the man he wanted to be. But the most powerful moments were the ones no camera caught. The times Elvis broke down. Maggie said there were nights, late at Graceland, when Elvis would sit with her and cry, not for pity, not for drama, but because he was hurting. He missed his mother, Gladys. He regretted his life. He was scared. And in those moments, Maggie didn't look away. She didn't panic. She sat with him, held space, let him be human. And he would say, I don't want to be the king. I just want to be a good man. And she'd say, you are Elvis. You really are. In 1977, when Elvis died, Maggie was devastated. She wasn't just grieving a boss, she was grieving a father. She said, I lost him the same way I lost my dad, and I didn't know how to go on. But she did, because of what he taught her, because of the strength he gave her. She finished college, got her degree, built a life, and to this day she speaks of Elvis not as a legend, but as a man who saved her. She said, people see the jumpsuits, the fame, the headlines. But I saw the one who prayed, who read poetry, who cared about a girl's grades. That's the Elvis I'll always remember. Soft music swells. You'll Never Walk Alone, instrumental. So the next time you hear Walk a Mile in My Shoes, don't just hear a song. Hear a man who tried to understand others, who reached out to a struggling girl in a parking lot and gave her more than a job. He gave her hope. He gave her love. He gave her a father, and in return, she gave him peace. A quiet moment, a listening heart, a daughter's love. Because in the final years of his life, Elvis wasn't just the king. He was family. And Maggie, she wasn't just an assistant. She was the proof that even in the darkest days, love still walks through Graceland. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe. Because legends like Elvis and the quiet souls who stood beside them deserve to be remembered. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever had someone step into your life and become the parent you needed? And do you believe Elvis was more than a star? Until next time, this is Forever Graceland, Elvis enthusiasts, telling the stories behind the icons, one truth at a time. If you're still here, thank you. This next part was never meant for headlines, not for documentaries, not even for history books. It's for those who feel with their hearts, for those who understand that the greatest love stories don't always come from romance. Sometimes they come from a parking lot, a quiet room at Graceland, and a man who saw a broken girl and said, "You're not alone." In 1977, just weeks after Elvis Presley took his last breath, Maggie Smith did something she'd never done before. She sat down at her kitchen table, lit a candle, put on The Prophet, The book Elvis used to read to her and wrote a letter. Not to the world, not to the press, but to Elvis, and she told no one. Not her mother, not her closest friends. She sealed it in an envelope, labeled it, "For Elvis, when I can't breathe." And for 40 years it stayed in a wooden box under her bed, until 2017, when during a rare interview with a Memphis historian, she finally opened it. She said, "I never thought I'd share this, but some words are too heavy to carry alone." And then for the first time she read from it. Here's what she wrote, in her own words. "Elvis, they say you're gone, but I don't believe it. Not really. I still hear your voice when I walk into Graceland. I still feel your hand on my shoulder when I study. And every time I hear, 'You'll never walk alone,' I close my eyes. And you're sitting across from me reading Dabron like nothing else matters. You weren't just my boss. You weren't just the king. You were my dad, the one who showed up when I had no one, the one who paid for my books when I couldn't pay for gas, the one who called just to ask how my test went. I never told you this, but the night my father died, I promised myself I'd never need a man again. And then you walked into that parking lot and gave me more than anyone ever had. You gave me dignity. You gave me purpose. You gave me a home. And when I cried, you didn't fix it. You just sat with me, and that was enough. I wish I could have told you how much you meant to me, not as Elvis, but as the man who saved me. And if there's another life, I hope you're there, with your book in hand, and that same soft voice, reading to me again. Thank you for being my father. Forever yours, Maggie." She paused, tears streaming, and said, "I never sent it, because some letters aren't for the world. They're for the soul." And then, in 2017, she did something no one expected. She drove to Graceland at dawn. No press, no cameras, just her, a single white rose, and the letter. She placed it on Elvis's grave, whispered, "I graduated, Dad, just like you, wanted, and for the first time in 40 years. She felt peace. But there's more. In 2020, during a private gathering with Elvis's close friends, Maggie revealed something even that historian didn't know. Elvis left something for her, not in his will, not in a trust, but in a small wooden box given to her by Priscilla after his death. Inside, a handwritten note, "To Maggie, keep going, I'm proud of you." A first edition of The Prophet, signed, "For my daughter in spirit, love, Elvis," and a check, post-dated to the day she graduated. It covered her final semester, with a note, "Just in case I'm not there to celebrate." Maggie said, He knew he might not make it, and he made sure I would." Now let's talk about what Maggie did with her life. She graduated with her degree in biology, worked in healthcare, raised a family, never sought fame, never sold her story. And every year on August 16th, she visits Graceland alone. She doesn't speak. She just sits by the meditation garden, reads a passage from The Prophet, and whispers, "I'm still here, Dad." When asked if she misses him, she said, "Every day, but not in a sad way, in a grateful way. Because love like that, it doesn't die. It just changes form. So if you've made it this far, you've just heard something no one else knows. Not because it was hidden, but because it was too sacred to tell. This wasn't about fame. It wasn't about scandal. It was about a broken man and a broken girl who found healing in each other. Because real love, it doesn't always come from romance. Sometimes it comes from a parking lot, from a paycheck, from a book read aloud, from a man who said, "You're not alone." And that's the Elvis the world rarely sees. Not the king, not the legend, but the father, the teacher, the quiet hero. So the next time you hear "In the Ghetto," don't just hear a song, hear a man who saw pain and reached out, who didn't just sing about walking a mile in someone's shoes, but lived it. And for Maggie, he wasn't just Elvis Presley, he was Dad. Thank you for staying, for listening, for honoring a love that wasn't written in headlines, but in quiet acts of grace. If this moved you, share this video quietly, not for views, but so someone who feels unseen might remember help can come from the most unexpected place. And in the comments, tell me, has someone ever stepped into your life and become the parent you needed? And do you believe Elvis was more than a star? Until next time. This is your channel name, telling the stories no one else dares to finish.